In talking to Dottie in the past, things have come up that she said, well, when I lived at the Women's Club, that was time to think, I want to know more. And I think we all do. And as you're listening to what she has to say today, you may very well have some questions. And I had asked her before. She said, oh, sure. If there's some questions, I'd be happy to answer. You know, she's pretty much gone the full circle. She was here after college until she was married and lived here at that time. And then later came back as a member and served as president. And so now she's here and does so many nice things at the club. So it's going to be lots of fun to find out what her experiences were while she was living here at the Women's Club. And it's Dottie Berner, and we're so happy to have her talk to us today. And they're going to videotape this so that we can put it in the archives. Plus, some of the girls that wanted to come and said, oh, I'll miss that, because they had to be out of town, so they can see the tape later. Dottie, won't you come and talk to us?
Thank you, Mary Jane. I'm not like the people at the Victoria. If you want your Tic Tacs, I have mine here, so don't hesitate. You won't bother me if you need Tic Tacs or a drink of water or anything like that. Well, the newsletter says that today's program is to be my telling about living here at the Dayton Women's Club. However, I need to set the stage, okay? To do that, I'll have to tell a little bit about myself and about what downtown Dayton was like at that time. And if, as I go along, there are questions or comments or corrections, don't hesitate to interrupt. And I know there are a lot of native Daytonians here, so I could very well be wrong in some of my memories. My home was in Sydney, Ohio, which is north of here, about an hour's drive on the interstate. In 1948, I graduated from Ohio Wesleyan University with a major in accounting. I had 2 job offers here in Dayton. One was to be on the flying squad at Rikes. Now, the flying squad was a training program for a career in retailing. Flying squad people reported to personnel every morning for assignment to departments which would need help. It was interesting. The other offer was an accountant's job in a small business that one of the married vets in my classes and his father had. Bill was the accounting half of the firm, and his dad was an insurance agent. Well, because of my major, I chose the accounting position. Well, as I said, this was a small office. There was the secretary, the father and his assistant, and me. Bill hadn't yet graduated, so there was no accounting business to do, you know. So there I was, filing insurance forms and letters, etc. It was boring and pretty lonely, you know, in this little tiny office. And those filing cabinets kept falling over on me. I'd open too many drawers, fall over. As I said, though, that I had friends from Ohio Wesleyan here, and I did meet them for dinner. They worked at Rikes, and some of them lived here at the Dayton Women's Club. They enjoyed being on the flying squad, and they were having fun, and they loved living here as well. So I inquired then at Rikes to see if there might still be a place for me on the flying squad. There was, and so I switched jobs. When I came to Dayton, of course, I needed to have a place to live. So Mother and I tried, first of all, at the YWCA. They had no available rooms, but they did have a registry of rooms to rent in the city, and I chose one of these places. It was on Eastview Avenue, off of North Main Street, about a 3-block walk from the bus stop. You must remember that apartments were scarce right after World War II, nor could I have afforded one on $35 a week. So, following dinner and perhaps a movie with my friends, they'd come back here, and then I took the bus home. Well, one night after a movie, I was waiting for my bus on Main Street, probably about where the Loft Theater is now, but in the middle of the street. Buses ran down the middle of the streets in those days, and that's where the bus stops were. Well, this fellow cruised up in his car wanting to pick me up. I turned my back, you know. He went around the block, and the same thing happened. And the third time he came around the block and parked in front of Berrar's floor covering, which was on the northwest corner across from the Biltmore Hotel. I assumed then that he was waiting to see which bus I took, so I scooted over to the hotel and took a cab home. Well, right after that incident, I checked into the room situation here. As it happened, a room on the third floor would soon become available, and in the meanwhile, I could sublet a room on the second floor, as that woman was going to be gone for quite a while, so I took it, of course. Well, let me describe Dayton in 48, 49, and 50 as I remember it. I'll talk about the places I frequented and which interested me. Next door, to the north, right over here, the Women's Club, where the big parking lot is now, was Whitmer Brothers Funeral Home. And between the club and Whitmer's a very small parking lot. I learned later that my husband's family were long friends of the Whitmers, and that the Burners had permission to use the funeral home parking lot unless it was being used for their business, you know. Then to the south side of the club, on the other side of the alley, was another small Victorian home. And this housed, I believe, Catholic Children's Services. It was a service organization of some sort there. And then across the street, right over there, was another old home. Elaine Younger had her interior decorating shop there, and I think she started out at Reich's in the furniture department. Then around the corner, along First Street, just west of where the 111 building is now, and where there are just two great big parking lots, was the Loretto, which was a Roman Catholic residence for women. The First Baptist Church and the YMCA were as they are now, and then west on Monument, on both sides of the street, were homes. Just before the bridge, where Monument goes across the bridge, and where North Robert Boulevard came into Monument, was the popular Neil's restaurant. And I assume that this was the forerunner of Neil's Heritage House at Shaunson Patterson. I'm not sure. I don't know if Mr. Wade would know that history or not. But their deep fried shrimp was wonderful. So I'm not trying to authenticate Dayton as it was then. I've probably forgotten some neat places and have a fuzzy memory about others. But here we go with what I do remember. There were 3 exclusive dress shops, all with a block area here on First Street: Mrs. Apollyon, Mrs. Eugene Gray, and Billy Lewis. The Van Cleve Hotel stood where the parking lot is, next to Christ Episcopal Church. And south of that was the Miami Hotel, and then came Reich's. There were so many other wonderful stores. Lekas Furrier's, Thal's, the Metropolitan, Elder Johnson, Walker's Men's Store, the Home Store, and Crawford's Shoe Store are some that I remember. And across from Reich's on 2nd Street were a number of small stores: Amor Neubauer Jeweler, and a hat shop, and some other ones. I didn't buy at these other stores because of Reich's employee discount, except for shoes. Then I went to Elder Johnson to get the narrow sizes that I needed. There was also a wealth of theaters, which ran first-rate movies. There were the Victory Theater, now the Victoria, and then Lowe's across the street from that and adjacent to Reich's. Jack Weimer conducted his Man on the Street interviews there for years for his radio program. The Keith Theater was on 4th Street, west of Main, and the Colonial Theater was at 5th and Ludlow, where my church, St. John's Lutheran Church, is now. The Strand Theater stood where the Convention Center is now, and the State was on 4th Street on the east side of Main. And oh, the restaurants. Service in Buell was by the First Street Garage and was a special favorite of ours. Small, dapper George Service lived in the same apartment building as 2 of my friends. Their parents had to have helped them financially. I don't know how they did it otherwise. But he gave us extra special attention and good tables when we went in there. And there were twin brothers working at the counter there. When it was my turn to have bridge club, I ordered dessert from these men, and they had everything all ready for me, down to that shake can of whipped cream, you know. They were awfully nice to us. The Seville was where Elder Bierman is now, It later became the King Cole, and then that moved to the lobby of the Winters Tower. The hotels, the Biltmore and the Miami, had coffee shops that I remember. A favorite was the Purple Cow at the Miami Hotel. And then we'd go to the Blue Moon, which was an Oriental restaurant south of the Seville, below street level. And a little farther south, we went to the Young Women's League on 4th Street, or McShane's across from the Young Women's League on 4th Street. A lot of newspaper people went to McShane's, I think. And sometimes we were daring and went to Coors 29 on 5th Street. And then the Virginia Cafeteria east of Main Street was a nice change of pace, too. All these wonderful places for dining and entertainment, all within easy walking distance of the Dayton Women's Club. And here I was at 225 North Ludlow Street at the perfect place at the perfect time. And this truly was the perfect place. Every room on the long second floor corridor that's over the dining room was occupied, except the last one on the right, and it was kind of a utility room. It had an ironing board and practical kinds of things. And each room looked much like the room which is open upstairs. It had a twin bed and a dresser and a chair and a window and a small closet. And that, I mean, small, really small. There are 2 bathrooms on the second floor. One is still used today, and it's the one close to the boutique. The larger one was more dormitory-like, and it was about halfway down the long corridor on the right side. And there was a telephone on a table just at the top of the stairs on the second floor, just in that little corner there, and that's the telephone where we received and made our calls. There was also a small room with a hot plate or 2 and some kitchen things. And it was either where the boutique is now, or it's along the corridor, which is just to the north of that corridor where the boutique is. I don't remember which. And then on the 3rd floor, up the winding stairway, were 3 more rooms. And they are in the original house, so they have the high ceilings and lovely woodwork and charm of our parlors. We had a house mother or resident manager. She lived in a tiny suite at the top of the stairs on the 2nd floor, the first room on the left. Her room was almost big and had an adjoining bath. As the club gradually phased out the renting of rooms and a house mother's services were no longer required, this suite then became the bride's room. I noticed that now this is an office, made to join another office by having a door cut in the east wall of that room. And the bride's room now is one of those card rooms the board made by removing walls between 2 of the small bedrooms. My first room, the temporary one, was the last room on the south side of the long corridor. It is now filled with heating and air conditioning ducts. I had 2 windows, one along the alley and then one to the west facing the fire escape. I used to look out and down and see the nuns, sleeves rolled up, working in the kitchen of the Loretto. Each tenant had a key to the front door. Incidentally, there's a story about that door. Somehow the etched glass window in the door was broken, and Roger Brown, among his antiques, had an exact replica with which to replace it. Now, of course, it has the plastic protector on it. Mary Goss was social secretary. She had a phenomenal memory. She knew the name of every one of our 1,500 members and a great deal of history about each one of them, too. Louise Boucher managed the dining room. Both women were gracious and charming and perfectly suited to their positions. The reception area, the parlors, the reception area was strictly functional, not nearly the lovely and welcoming area, thanks to Mr. Wade, that it is now. The parlors were beautifully furnished, but in traditional style. And I believe it wasn't until Sue Studebaker was president that the gradual change to Victorian was made. The first items were the Oriental rugs. They were laid over wall-to-wall carpet. These crept and bunched up as rugs will do upon certain types of carpet. So when the wall-to-wall carpet was taken up, light from below shone through the spaces of the floorboards. There were a number of us who worked at Reich's. And then there were people worked other places. One girl from Minster worked for a firm of patent attorneys. And there was a lady here named Clara Swartz. And I thought she was a sister of Josephine and Hermione Swartz. But no mention is ever made of a third sister, so I could be mixed up about that connection. Then on the third floor were two older career women, Sarah Whitaker and Nell Turner. Nell worked at York Refrigeration. They had their own furniture in those large rooms. And then I had the smallest of the three rooms on the third floor, and it was along the alley, but it was huge compared to my second floor room. And there was one bathroom up there for the three of us. I wish I could remember what I paid for my room. I know the third floor room cost more than the second floor room, but still couldn't have been too much considering what I was earning. Unless you think me terribly inept, I have to tell you that all Reich's people earned that salary. $35 per week was the starting wage at Reich's at that time. Of course, increases came along, and we did have our employees' discounts, so maybe it wasn't quite so bad as it sounds. So each morning, we went to Reich's and had breakfast in the employees' cafeteria and had lunch there as well. And then we had big discussions about which of those many restaurants we would go to for dinner. Evenings, we played bridge, chat, and read, just like college without the studying. And this was truly the most carefree of lives. We didn't have to clean, cook, or bother with a car. Everyone worked on Saturdays at Reich's, with days off coming during the week. Mrs. Wishay invited me to have lunch at the Women's Club on my days off, even though I was not a member at the time. My home was in Sydney, as I said. I took the Greyhound bus home on Sundays, frequently enough to do laundry there, but I ironed in the room across the hall from me. And Sundays, when I was in Dayton, we went to church, visiting all these nearby churches, and then going to the Van Cleve for brunch. I always ordered waffles with melted butter and powdered sugar. Oh, a true living. I was slender then, too. And then I was introduced to Bob. When he'd ring the doorbell when he called for me, same as if I lived at home, but the luxury of privacy was non-existent. And one evening when he brought me home, the house mother was standing on the stairs, obviously frightened, and pointing to the kitchen doors, which were swinging open and shut. She feared we'd had a break-in. So Bob suggested calling the police, and she did. Well, within minutes, several squad cars arrived from different directions, all arriving at the very same time. They searched the club, and the burglar turned out to be a left-open kitchen window, causing a draft. But it was scary for a minute. So Bob and I became engaged then and set our wedding day. About 3 weeks before our wedding, I got the flu, and I was really, really very ill. So my friends here called Bob, who called his family's doctor, and the dear man came, made a house call, climbing all the way up to the third floor. And I think it had to be one of the very few, if any, times that a man ever got above the first floor. So I lived here then until mid-November of 1950. We were married on November 26th, the Thanksgiving weekend of the big snowstorm. Thereby hangs another tale. We won't get into that. Sometime after I moved out of the club, the board decided to get out of the landlord business. It was a gradual phasing out. No one was asked to leave. When rooms became available, they just weren't rented again. And for years, there were just two residents, one of whom, Miss Bernadette Romer, served as resident manager. She left sometime during 1974, and then there was one, and her name was Helen or Helena. Anyway, she was very small, and she was elderly by this time, but she had the heart of a lion. She was in the corridor on the second floor when a would-be burglar broke through one of the skylights in the ceiling. And she chased him down the hall, out the door, and down the fire escape. Little tiny lady. Our security system was installed shortly after that. Then 6 years after we were married in 1956, the mothers of two of our friends sponsored me for the junior group. And at that time, a member was required to purchase one share of stock to become a junior member, and then a second one upon joining the senior group. I still have my certificate. I have I bought my 2 shares at the all, instead of one, I bought both of them at the same time. I don't think there's no monetary value to these, of course. The meeting day of the junior group was the second Tuesday of each month. I had a permanent sitter for that day. It was my big day out for the month. Many of us, after becoming 35 and joining the larger group, weren't involved at first. And I said way back then that I'd keep my membership for our daughter's wedding reception and for my old age. Well, she was married in 1992 and her reception was here, and I'm here today. 20 years later, in 1970, I was appointed to an unexpired term on the board, mostly because I could type, and a co-chairman who could type was needed for the newsletter. The chairperson was a friend of mine, and I'd already been helping her with doing the typing for her. And then I was elected to the board for 2 3-year terms. 4 of those years were as co-chair and then chairman of the newsletter, and the last 2 were as president in 1975 and 1976. The popular Roger Brown was dining room manager then, having succeeded from assistant to manager when Mrs. Wachet retired. While I was president, we changed to general manager format, a person who would handle all the aspects of women's club business. Roger left our employ and soon became dining room manager at the Dayton Bicycle Club. We're still friends, Roger and I. We had a succession of managers to begin with, lots of trial and error, but I think the board has it right now with Mr. Wade, don't you? A lot of momentous decisions about the Women's Club were made while I was on the board, particularly under the presidency of Virginia Toolman. The first thing that I remember was applying for and obtaining our liquor license. At that time, the license was in the name of the president of the organization. Bob was president of the NCR Country Club, and when I was president down here, we each had a liquor license in our own name. and Bob, to this day, he'll drink non-alcoholic beer rather than, he doesn't drink at all. So the policy of allowing privileges to be extended only to daughters of members of the club was changed. It came about when one of the members asked if her son's wedding reception could be held here. His fiancée had no family and here, and no place to have the reception. Well, the board was about to deny this request, and this was before we had the general manager, and all such requests came before the board rather than go to the club manager. And then someone said, well, why ever not? So we had a great deal of discussion, and pretty soon, as a result of that, privileges were extended to members' children, grandchildren, and husbands. Then also during Virginia Toolman's term of office in 73 and 74, the board selected the carpet in the dining room and the carpet and the china which we use today. And then after much correspondence with all the beneficiaries of Thelma K. Drees's will and many meetings in Judge Rodney Love's chambers, the Thelma K. Drees Trust was broken, enabling the board to use those funds, the income from those funds, for purposes other than specified in Mrs. Drees's will. And also during those years, an offer was made to purchase the Dayton Women's Club. An office building would be erected here with space for a relocated women's club, or we could just fold or whatever. I think small discussion groups were held, and the matter was put to vote by the membership. It was overwhelmingly defeated, much to the relief of the board and most anyone else. I have a few old club directories. It was interesting to me to note that the 1971 directory lists Louise Wachet as dining room manager and Roger Brown as her assistant. And I don't have the 72 one, but the 73 directory lists Roger Brown then as dining room manager. Miss Bernadette Romer was listed as resident manager through 1972. In 1975, William Stewart was listed as house manager. Do you remember him? He was a delightful man, and I think he came to us from Winners Bank Executive Dining Room, someplace like that. Maybe he'd been at a country club too, I don't know. Well, that's really about all I have, but I've saved the best to last. When I became a board member, I had come full circle, Guess where the newsletter office was? My old room, the last one on the alley on the south side of the building.
Welcome to the Dayton Women's Club. Dottie and I would like you to join us in a brief walk through the house.
The house was purchased for the Dayton Women's Club from the Darst family, and it was purchased in 1916, and this is all the original artwork that was developed. The furniture was purchased by our historical committee in the 70s, and it was so that we could bring the clubhouse back to its authenticity.
Wonderful. Enjoyed it.
We have two parlors. The second parlor is what we call our red parlor.
Bye, guys. Yeah?
And in here we will talk to prospective members, and we'll talk to people that are coming down to have their wedding receptions or parties for our clubhouse. And again, we have the beautiful marble fireplaces. There are 8 of them throughout the whole house. You want to go upstairs?
Sure.
Okay. This is one of our committee rooms. It has the marble fireplace, it has the beautiful work on the ceilings, and this is where the ladies come in to play bridge, or could have any kind of a committee meeting.
Finding the fireplace. Here.
So we can close
Huh? Same with the fireplace.
fireplace. Another marble fireplace.
I got myself in the picture.
Oh, that's wonderful. Do it. That's the trick.
Okay, look in Pat's office. Okay, the next room we're going into is the small auditorium. And this is what we call our small auditorium, and it's named after one of our former members, Ivanette Wright Miller. She was related to the Wright brothers, and at her death was kind enough to leave our club some money. So in her honor, we have named this room after her.
John, did you get her picture when she said,
She was 96.
read that out loud, even say that.
Ivanette Wright Miller was born in 1896 and died in 1995 at the age of 99. Okay, now we're going into what's known as the newer part of our building. The attic rooms are up to my left, and that's just storage. This is what used to be a pantry as far as the house was concerned. When the ladies lived on the second floor and on the third floor, this was an area that they used. Now we use it as our boutique. Yeah. Oh, they make gorgeous wreaths. $25.
25, yeah, I just wonder.
Prices are fantastic.
She's selling on the side too.
Why not?
Whatever. These are some of the items that we sell in the boutique. They're made by our decoration ladies who are in charge of our decorations. And this wreath is just $25. A real bargain.
Yeah, we might as well.
Okay, down this hallway, where some of our ladies used to live when they came to Dayton in the early 30s and the 40s. We had people here that lived as late as the 70s in these rooms. We'll just look at 1 or 2 of them. They're very small, but very serviceable. You would have just a bed and a dresser and your closet. would use this one. This would be one of the larger rooms that was rented. Right now, we use it as a bridge room. The ladies can come up here and play bridge and then go down in the dining room and have their lunch at the appropriate time. Mrs. Berner would have stayed in this particular room, or lived in this particular room. And then we have another one down the hall. We'll show you in a moment. Wait, we could get a better view out of this door.
Yeah.
Because there's more light. Oh, and it doesn't look too bad. This was also one of Dottie's rooms, where she had the window to the side on the alley, and then the window that looks out on the back. Our air conditioning unit now is housed in this room. I mean, it had to have a very short... In the room that they used to print the newsletter, it's also a room that they used for their ironing. The ironing board was set up in here. And you can see the fire escape out the back window. This is a room that we use for our wedding weekends. When the bridesmaids need a place to dress, they usually come up here and they can put on their makeup and change their clothes. This is up here on the 3rd floor. This is a workroom that the decorating committee uses. In the days when the ladies lived here, this was actually 2 rooms. There was a wall that divided the room that we have now. But it's now used as a craft room. And the pretty silver on the walls is our new heating and air conditioning system. Since we can't have it on top of the roof, it has to be inside. We have 2 beautiful marble mantels. They're part of the 8 that I told you about before. They're exact replicas of what we have downstairs on the 1st floor.
Get that one.
Now here's a black mantle. When the ladies do the decorating for Christmas here at the house, they try and they make their arrangements up here on these mantels, and then all they have to do is take them downstairs and then set them up. So we do put them to use, even though we don't fire them up. This is the room that Dottie would have lived in on the 3rd floor, and this would have been her bathroom that she shared with 2 other people up here. And then we have the stairway to the stars that goes up here. It doesn't go anyplace. But we can go all the way up to the top. And then we have an attic that comes up, or you can get onto the roof from a little hole that's up here. But there's a stairway all the way up to the ceiling on this side. This is our guest bathroom up here on the 2nd floor. It has the original clawfoot tub around the corner.
What's going to stay in there?
Over here. Okay. And then the tile on the floor is original, and the tile on the walls with the sink coming off the wall. They're all original. And we have the heaters with the metal top on it. Not everybody gets to see those anymore. These are the mailboxes for our board of directors when we need to pass out important information and before a board meeting. we'll put that in everybody's mailboxes. This is Pat. She's been with us just a little over a year, but she's invaluable.
Thank you.
You're not online?
Yeah.
Second.
Not at the moment. Not at the moment. Okay.
Yeah, we have some.
All right. We're going to lead the group down the basement.
Put on tight, John. Where's the
Start. This first room that we're going to go into is where we put our clean and soiled laundry. This is where it's stacked according to colors. Now watch your step from here on out. These are all old pipes from the original portion of the house, and through this little door there where the beadboard wood is, that goes to our sewer pipes that go out to the city. That goes underneath the street. It's underneath both of them. Reminds me of my basement at home, where I grew up. Okay, these are the original pipes that were first put in when the house was electrified or when we had furnaces. This used to be the coal cellar. They'd bring the coal in through the side windows. There's a coal bin in this room and in the other room. This equipment we're not using anymore. This is Celia, and Celia's doing our laundry. We just purchased 2 brand new machines for her to use. She'll sort it, then she'll put it on this. Oh, you want me here? These are 2 new pieces of equipment, a new washer and a new dryer. And then we have an ironer to do the tablecloths and the napkins with. Our food storage. This is our food storage area. We've got our cooler over here to my left, and then we have all of our dry goods that are on the shelves off to the right. And they're rotated, and we take our inventory annually. Entrance or exit will take you up to the kitchen over this way. The Dries room, one of the rooms we use for our entertaining. We have the original Rookwood fountain that used to appear upstairs in the dining room when we just had a tea room. And we didn't want to get rid of it, so we wanted to make sure that we would continue to keep it. This is the fountain. This room is held for a lot of parties during the holidays. We have a picture of the house that was painted by one of the members of our club who's a part of our group of artists that meet every Monday here at the club. They actually meet down here in the Dries room, set up their easels, and they have their painting classes. This is one of theirs.
That is this house?
Yes, it's a picture of the front of the house. It's not the same as we see it today. We no longer have these little bushes. We do have this tree. But this is the entrance to the dining room and the auditorium on the main floor. And this, of course, are the rooms that we've already gone through upstairs. This was painted in 1966. So it gives you an idea what the house looked like then. This is some of the original tile work that was down when this part of the house was first built. And this continues up the stairway to the first floor and into the clothes hall area. If you come around, there is a picture here on the wall of Thelma Dries. This lady was responsible for a lot of the work that was done on the house. She left a very nice estate to the Women's Club, and we've been fortunate that it has grown and allowed us to make a lot of our renovations and a lot of our improvements. She was a very gracious lady. We'll hold 282 people at capacity. It's used for wedding receptions, it's used for our large programs. We're open for lunch every day. We have Sunday brunches. We have Friday night dinners. And any kind of party that our member might want to have down here at the club, all they have to do is request a time and a date. The newest thing that we've added to the dining room is our elevator. The elevator was installed in 1996, and it goes from the basement to the second floor, and it allows a lot of our ladies who have difficulty making the 2 flights of stairs to use the elevator. It accommodates a lot more of them than would be able to otherwise. Now I'd like to introduce you to our manager. This is Dale Wade, and he's very capable and takes care of all of our business down here at the club. Does a fantastic job.
Thank you.
Come on. Hi, Justin. Come on, John.
Did I help you when I was...
No, that's okay. Deborah, we're going to put you on tape.
I don't have my lipstick on. Why are you coming here with
This is our chef, Deborah Field. Hi. And Deborah does a real good job in our kitchen. And then we also have our sous chef. This is Earl. And Earl's been with us more than 20 years.
All right.
Deborah not quite as long, but we wouldn't trade either one of them.
Thank you.
This is the house as it was shown in 1916. There's a house right next door where our parking lot is now. And then if we didn't have this picture, we would have Whitmer's funeral home would be over here. The middle picture is a picture of the tea room as it was before we started our dining room business. This is another picture of the tea room, and this was a part of the fountain that we saw downstairs in the Dries room. This is the original Wright Auditorium upstairs on the second floor, and this is how the dining room looked even as far back as the 50s and the 60s. It had the tile floor, and these were the tables that they served their tea and cookies on, and had light lunches.
We hope you have enjoyed our walkthrough of the Dayton Women's Club. We are happy to share our part of Dayton's history with you.